What really happened behind the velvet voice of Phyllis Hyman? She was elegant, unforgettable, and powerful, an R&B queen whose voice could melt a room. With hits like You Know How to Love Me and Living All Alone, Phyllis Hyman soared to fame. But while her music reached millions, her pain remained hidden. On June 30th, 1995, she was found lifeless in her bedroom. Officially, it was an overdose, but those who knew her believed the real cause ran much deeper, buried beneath years of heartbreak and loneliness. Today, we're going beyond the spotlight. Inside the abandoned house she left behind, the fragile fortune she lost, and the emotional battles she carried to the end. This is the haunting story of Phyllis Hyman, and it begins now. To truly understand Phyllis Hyman's story, we have to go back to the late 1940s. It was then that Philip Hyman, an Army veteran, met Louise Lively, a waitress. Not long after, on July 6, 1949, their first daughter was born, Phyllis Linda Hyman. The family soon moved to Pittsburgh and settled in the St. Clair Village public housing projects. Life there wasn't easy. Over time, Phyllis became the eldest of 7 siblings, and the weight of that responsibility shaped much of her early life. Her father worked for the railroad and was gone frequently. As his health deteriorated, he began drinking heavily, creating even more strain at home. Meanwhile, Louise struggled with her mental health and found it difficult to care for the growing family, often leaving Phyllis's younger sister, Jeannie, to step into a mothering role. Despite the instability, Phyllis stood out. Tall and commanding, she had a presence that could not be ignored. At Carrick High School, she joined the choir, where her rich, expressive voice drew immediate attention. But although she had clear talent, singing wasn't something she saw as a path forward. Not at first. Her family didn't push her to pursue music, and the idea of life in the spotlight felt distant, even intimidating. Phyllis wasn't drawn to performing because she sought attention. In fact, she often expressed a dream of living life on her own terms, independent and unbothered. Yet the music was always in her, and even in the chaos of her early home life, she found power in her voice. As she grew older, tensions with her mother grew stronger. Phyllis struggled to make sense of Louise's choices, especially her decision to have so many children despite being unable to care for them properly. The absence of emotional warmth left a deep imprint on Phyllis, shaping the complex emotional world she would carry with her for the rest of her life. After graduating from high school, Phyllis Hyman began her slow entry into the world of professional music by joining a vocal group called Sounds of Ebony. Though she battled stage fright, performing with the group helped her begin building the confidence she needed. She later earned a scholarship to Robert Morris College, becoming the first person in the school's history to receive a music scholarship. Her high school choir teacher, David Tambour, recognized her immense potential and took her under his wing, giving her private lessons. Tambour's family supported her as well, helping polish her image by fixing her teeth, selecting her wardrobe, and even taking her to nightclubs to get comfortable performing in front of crowds. Despite this support, Phyllis left college after just a year. She took a job as a secretary and quietly slipped into a period marked by heavy drinking and pills. Not long after, she was recruited to sing with a touring group called the New Directions. Life on the road exposed her to the demands of professional performing, but her self-doubt lingered. Deep down, Phyllis didn't believe she had what it took to make it as a singer. Eventually, the momentum with the New Directions slowed. Phyllis stepped away from music for a time, taking work as a babysitter. Still, the pull of the stage never left her. One of her biggest influences was jazz vocalist Nancy Wilson. Phyllis idolized her and once admitted that Wilson's brilliance made her hesitate to pursue singing seriously. In her mind, if she couldn't sing like Nancy, she wasn't good enough. Eventually, she decided to give it another shot and auditioned for a group called All the People. The group was based in Miami, and by 1973, Phyllis had started to carve out a reputation in the city's vibrant music scene. That same year, famed choreographer and director Bob Fosse was in town filming a biopic about Lenny Bruce. One night, he happened to catch one of Phyllis's performances. Captivated by her powerful voice and striking presence, he offered her a cameo in the film. It was a small, non-speaking role, but it gave her a notable credit and marked a turning point in her still blossoming career. While living in Miami, Phyllis Hyman performed with a variety of local bands, including the Hondo Beat, a group that regularly played on cruise ships. It was during one of these gigs that she first encountered Larry Alexander, a fellow performer whose voice caught her attention late one night. Curious, she peeked out of her cabin and saw him. Larry seemed to embody everything she had dreamed of in a partner. They quickly became close, both romantically and professionally. By 1974, Phyllis had formed her own band, the PH Factor, made up of musicians she'd met along the way. Larry, now living with her as her boyfriend, often drove her to gigs and supported her growing career. While performing at the Cahoots Lounge, Phyllis met music executive Sid Maurer, who persuaded her to sign with Desert Moon Records. At first, the opportunity seemed promising. But as recording sessions began, Phyllis and her band became frustrated with the label's creative direction. Desert Moon, particularly producer George Kerr, whom Larry, now also acting as her manager, had brought in, wanted Phyllis to sing trendy disco tracks that didn't match her artistic sensibilities. Phyllis had a deep-rooted love for jazz and classic R&B. She had the range and versatility to sing anything, but the material being pushed on her felt overproduced and disconnected from who she was as an artist. Still, she went along with it, though it never felt right. By the end of 1975, Phyllis and the PH Factor relocated to New York City, landing a steady engagement at Rust Brown's nightclub. It was there that composer and bandleader Norman Connors saw her perform. He was immediately impressed and felt she'd be a perfect fit for his upcoming album. Connors had a particular song in mind for her, a track originally recorded by Connie Stevens as Keep Growing Strong, and later made famous by the Stylistics under the title Betcha by Golly Wow. Although the song had already seen chart success, Phyllis had never heard it. Still, she agreed to record it. Norman Connors secured the rights and brought Phyllis into the studio. Together, they recorded 3 tracks for his album, You Are My Starship, marking the moment that would become her first major breakthrough. The exposure would soon take her from local lounges to national recognition, and eventually lead her to sign with Buddha Records. You Are My Starship, the 1976 album by Norman Connors, marked a turning point in Phyllis Hyman's rising career. Connors had invited her to join him on his summer concert tour, and the album's first single, We Both Need Each Other, featuring Phyllis and Michael Henderson, climbed to number 23 on the R&B charts. Sensing the momentum, Desert Moon Records tried to capitalize by releasing a solo single from Phyllis, titled Baby, I'm Gonna Love You. The song managed to reach number 76 on the R&B charts, but failed to generate significant buzz. While on tour, Connors encouraged Phyllis and Larry Alexander, her boyfriend and manager, to consider leaving Desert Moon for Buddha Records, where he had found success. The label, known for artists like Gladys Knight and the Pips, promised creative freedom, something Phyllis valued deeply. Eventually, she and Larry made the switch. By early 1977, Phyllis had signed to Buddha and began working on her debut album for the label. In January of that year, Betcha by Golly Wow was re-released as a single, peaking at number 29 on the R&B charts. But despite this positive start, Buddha Records was already on shaky ground. Phyllis had chosen Buddha for one main reason: control. After years of being told what to sing and how to sound, she wanted to shape her own artistic identity. The label gave her that opportunity. Alongside Larry, who co-wrote and co-produced, she began crafting her self-titled debut album. But Larry, though ambitious, didn't have the name recognition or industry clout to break through commercially. and radio programmers weren't rushing to embrace tracks produced by unknowns. When the Phyllis Hyman album dropped in April 1977, it received mixed reviews. Stereo Review famously criticized the production, writing that the producers had wrought a miracle in reverse by managing to make her sound like just about everybody else. Still, the lead single, Loving You, Losing You, managed to hit number 32 on the R&B charts. The album itself peaked at number 49. Phyllis spent much of 1977 on tour promoting the release, but it failed to become a breakout success. In 1978, she and Larry returned to the studio to work on her second album, Sing a Song. Larry produced the entire project alongside co-producer Skip Scarborough. Despite its musical strengths, the album suffered a blow from poor timing. By the time it was released, Buddha Records had essentially collapsed. Clive Davis began his career in the music industry as a young attorney, eventually rising through the ranks to become president of Columbia Records. During his time there, he helped shape the careers of iconic artists such as Janis Joplin, Earth, Wind and Fire, and Aretha Franklin. One of his greatest regrets was letting Aretha slip through Columbia's fingers. The label failed to understand her artistry, and she left just before Clive became president. At Atlantic Records, she flourished, delivering era-defining hits like I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You and Respect. But Davis's trajectory took a dramatic turn in 1973 when he was fired from CBS amid a scandal involving payola and tax evasion. He was accused of misusing $94,000 in company funds, money that included a $50,000 apartment renovation and a $20,000 expense falsely listed as a party for Liza Minnelli, when it was actually for his son's bar mitzvah. He also faced allegations of spearheading a scheme to pay black radio stations $250,000 to promote Columbia's artists. In 1976, Davis pleaded guilty to a single count of tax evasion and was fined $10,000. Amid this turmoil, Davis launched a new chapter. He founded Arista Records and quickly signed rising stars like Barry Manilow and Melissa Manchester. By 1978, Arista had acquired Buddha Records, bringing Phyllis Hyman into Clive's orbit. Phyllis joined Arista with a $50,000 advance, stepping into a broader commercial spotlight. Her distinct voice soon found new platforms, not only in music but also in advertising. Her vocals, often featured in television jingles, became quietly familiar to millions. Clive Davis believed in Phyllis Hyman. To him, she had the voice, the look, and the presence of a superstar. And as someone known for launching careers, he saw immense potential in her. But Phyllis didn't share his excitement about joining Arista Records. At Buddha, she had enjoyed the creative freedom to shape her music. Arista, with its large corporate structure and Clive's strong influence, felt like a step in the opposite direction. She worried about losing the artistic control she had worked so hard to claim. After her previous album, Sing a Song, failed to make a commercial impact, Clive pulled it from the shelves and began making changes. He brought in Barry Manilow, Arista's top artist, to help produce a new version of the album, aiming to repackage Phyllis for a broader market. As her professional life shifted, so did her personal life. Around the same time, Phyllis was invited to represent Revlon Cosmetics as a brand ambassador. Amid the whirlwind of career moves, she quietly flew to Florida and married her longtime partner, Larry Alexander, in a small ceremony in September 1978. Reportedly, no family members were present. In January 1979, her revamped sophomore album, Somewhere in My Lifetime, was released. Half of the songs had already appeared on Sing a Song, but the addition of the Barry Manilow-produced title track gave it fresh momentum. The album reached number 15 on the R&B charts and number 70 on the pop charts. The title track climbed to number 12, marking her highest charting single to date. Despite this success, Clive was underwhelmed. He had hoped that pairing Phyllis with Barry would result in a breakout hit, something on par with the triumphs he had once envisioned for Aretha Franklin. Determined to keep pushing, Clive rushed Phyllis back into the studio, but this time he reassigned Barry to produce for Dionne Warwick instead. Though Barry had only worked on one song with Phyllis, he was given full creative control over Dionne's album. When Phyllis asked to bring in Quincy Jones for her next project, Clive refused. Phyllis Hyman's fourth album, You Know How to Love Me, marked a significant step forward in her career. Produced by James M. Toome and Reggie Lucas, it was released on October 23, 1979, just 9 months after her previous record. The album performed better commercially, peaking at number 10 on the R&B charts, with the title track reaching number 12 on the Hot Black Singles chart. Despite these gains, there was still a sense of uncertainty at the label. While Dionne Warwick came to Arista with a well-defined image, Phyllis didn't fit neatly into a single genre. She wasn't purely R&B, nor fully jazz, and she resisted Clive Davis's push toward mainstream pop. Her sound was uniquely hers, but the marketing team struggled to position her, and Clive, frustrated by her refusal to conform, slowly began to disengage. Phyllis believed Clive was deliberately misinterpreting her intentions. He wanted chart toppers. She wanted autonomy. And sometimes, those two visions simply couldn't coexist. Their working relationship became increasingly strained. Clive saw star potential in Phyllis, but she wasn't willing to bend to his creative vision. Beneath that professional tension may have been something more personal: fear. The same self-doubt and stage fright that haunted her early years seemed to linger. In one interview, Phyllis admitted that she may have been holding herself back out of fear of becoming too big, too fast. Meanwhile, things at home were falling apart. By the time her second album with Arista was underway, Phyllis had begun using cocaine alongside alcohol and pills. She reportedly told friends that it was Larry, her husband and manager, who introduced her to the drug to help her cope with the pressures of the business. Their relationship, once built on partnership and shared ambition, was beginning to fracture. Verbal arguments became more frequent, and those close to them began to see the cracks. Around this time, Phyllis made a deeply personal decision to terminate a pregnancy. She had never imagined motherhood for herself, especially while her career was in such a volatile place. In 1980, a new dynamic entered the picture when singer Angela Bofill signed with Arista. Like Phyllis, Angela had a jazz-influenced sound and a striking stage presence. But unlike Phyllis, she was willing to work within Clive Davis's framework. Angela's willingness to follow Clive's direction quickly made her a favorite, and the label shifted its focus. For Phyllis, the message was clear. She was being pushed aside. The tension between the two women wasn't just personal. It was symbolic of how the industry often rewarded conformity over artistry. And while Angela never achieved the commercial heights Clive had hoped for, the writing was on the wall. If Clive couldn't mold Phyllis into the star he wanted, he'd find someone else who would play the part. Phyllis Hyman's transition from recording artist to Broadway star was nothing short of remarkable. While performing a gig in New York, her talent caught the attention of pianist Lloyd Mears, the musical director for an upcoming revue inspired by the music of Duke Ellington. Mears believed Phyllis would be perfect for the production. According to Strength of a Woman, Phyllis was in rough shape the day of her audition. Hungover from a night of binging she had to reschedule, but when she finally stepped into the room, she delivered a stunning performance. Despite having no theater experience, she was cast in Sophisticated Ladies, a major Broadway production. It was a bold new chapter in her career, one Clive Davis strongly opposed, fearing it would distract her from recording music. But in October 1980, Phyllis began rehearsals. By the time the show opened in March 1981, her personal life had unraveled. She and Larry Alexander had separated. Their relationship had been strained for years. Larry wanted children, something Phyllis wasn't willing to sacrifice her career for. He also had ambitions of his own, and managing Phyllis had put his dreams on the back burner. Over time, the spark between them faded, and Phyllis moved on emotionally. Professionally, though, she soared. Sophisticated Ladies was a hit. Phyllis earned a Tony Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress in a Musical and won the Theatre World Award for Best Newcomer. But as always, success came with complications. She was frequently late to performances, often recovering from nights of heavy partying. Her immense talent was undeniable, but so were the inner battles she faced, fears, insecurities, and a growing dependence on substances. To ride the wave of her Broadway momentum, Arista pushed for a new album. Phyllis wanted to call it Sunshine in My Life, but Clive Davis overruled her and released it as Can't We Fall in Love Again, a title she deeply disliked. Produced by Norman Connors, the album came out in June 1981. With Clive's full promotional support, it performed well, peaking at number 11 on the R&B charts. The title track became Phyllis's first top 10 R&B single, reaching number 9. Still, the theme of loneliness lingered in both her music and public image. That same year, Jet magazine featured Phyllis on its cover with the headline, "Phyllis Hyman Wants Love to Match Records." Though the article was shaped by her publicity team to create a compelling hook, it fueled a narrative that followed her for years. That behind the elegance and voice was a woman longing for love she couldn't seem to find. Despite the confident image she projected to the world, Phyllis Hyman was often surrounded by loneliness. Publicly, she appeared to have companionship, linked to men like Larry Alexander, R&B singer Christopher Williams, and even NBA legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But having men in her life didn't mean she felt loved or fulfilled. Privately, Phyllis struggled. Her depression and addiction were becoming harder to hide. She often stayed out all night and at times even fell asleep during her own performances. It was clear something deeper was unraveling. During this period, she also stirred controversy by posing for several men's magazines. She appeared multiple times on the cover of Players and even posed nude for We. The reaction was swift. Endorsement deals disappeared, and Clive Davis, who had already grown frustrated with her, began to distance himself further. The fallout sent Phyllis into another downward spiral, and her substance abuse worsened. By January 1983, her time on Broadway had come to an end. After a successful 2-year run, Sophisticated Ladies closed when its producers pulled funding. For Phyllis, it meant the loss of a steady job and income. With no new album in rotation and no paycheck coming in, she returned to performing live shows while quietly working on her 6th studio album. Released in May 1983, Goddess of Love peaked at number 20 on the R&B charts. Phyllis thanked Clive in the liner notes, calling him right as always. But Clive had already moved on. The album's moderate performance wasn't enough to keep his attention, and by then, his focus had shifted entirely to a new rising star. That new star was Whitney Houston. After being urged by A&R executive Jerry Griffith to see her perform, Clive Davis was captivated. Whitney had everything he was looking for: beauty, grace, vocal brilliance, and star potential. She signed with Arista on April 10, 1983, just 1 month before Phyllis released Goddess of Love. Clive saw in Whitney what he had once hoped to cultivate in Phyllis, but without the resistance. While Phyllis had always wanted control over her career and image, Whitney, at least at the start, was willing to play the game. For Clive, the choice was easy. Though Phyllis had the voice, the elegance, and the presence to become a legend, her refusal to surrender creative control put her at odds with an industry built on compromise. And as Whitney began her meteoric rise, Phyllis was left grappling with what could have been. She resented the system, and perhaps resented herself for not playing along. At an Arista Records party in the early 1980s, tension between two of the label's most striking voices reached a quiet but powerful crescendo. Phyllis Hyman, regal and commanding as ever, was perched on a stool when a young Whitney Houston, Arista's rising star, was brought over to meet her. According to Whitney, Phyllis stood, slowly looked her over, circled her once, and then sat back down. Her words were cool and cutting. "So you're the one." Whitney's reply was simple but confident. "Yes, I'm the one." In the months that followed, Phyllis's presence in the spotlight began to fade. She picked up scattered performances and small film roles, including a part in Too Scared to Scream. But by 1984, her momentum had stalled. Goddess of Love hadn't made much noise, and it was clear that Arista's full attention had shifted to Whitney. Phyllis was eventually dropped from the label, still owing over $400,000 in unpaid advances and expenses. Despite everything, Phyllis remained defiant. She later reflected, "Clive Davis taught me to never be afraid. Even if he didn't mean to, I was terrorized. But if his plan was to destroy me, it didn't work." That same year, a glimmer of hope appeared. Steven Spielberg was casting for his adaptation of The Color Purple and considered Phyllis the perfect choice for the role of Shug Avery. Her first audition left a strong impression. But when the time came to perform in front of Spielberg himself, nerves got the best of her. Trying to take control of the session, she came across as overbearing rather than prepared. Surrounded by seasoned actors like Danny Glover and rising talents like Whoopi Goldberg, Phyllis's need to direct the room cost her the role. Still searching for a new beginning, Phyllis signed a 2-album deal with Philadelphia International Records, home to soul greats like Teddy Pendergrass and Patti LaBelle. She received a $50,000 signing bonus and got back to work. But old doubts lingered. During the recording sessions, A&R executive Dexter Wansel remembered her saying, "Here I am again, recording another album that's not going to go gold." Despite her outward confidence, the lack of commercial breakthrough continued to gnaw at her. Her drug use escalated, and not long after, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. In 1986, Phyllis released Living All Alone, her first album under the new label. The title track echoed the very truth she was living. Though she had a relationship at the time with a younger man named Tad, the loneliness remained. Not long after the album's release, Whitney Houston soared to new heights, winning an MTV Video Music Award and dominating the charts with her debut. Everything Clive Davis had once hoped to shape in Phyllis was now realized in Whitney. But only because Whitney had agreed to the image, the sound, and the control Phyllis had always resisted. Living All Alone never broke into the top 10. And while Phyllis publicly claimed she didn't care about commercial success, deep down, it hurt. Phyllis Hyman was no stranger to opportunity, but time and again, control, pride, and pain would shape the course of her journey. In 1985, when Bill Cosby was at the height of his television fame, he offered Phyllis a chance to open for him. But there was a condition. She had to lose weight. "Television adds 20 pounds, he told her. Phyllis agreed to the gig, but his comment cut deep. To her, "I want to make you a star" sounded more like a loss of agency than a dream come true. The experience didn't go well, and she walked away from what could have been a career-changing collaboration. Shortly before releasing the Living All Alone single, Phyllis quietly checked herself into rehab under the name Linda. The program helped, briefly. When she returned, the album was already making waves. It peaked at number 11 on the R&B charts and opened new doors. After a standout performance at Morehouse College, Spike Lee invited her to appear in his film School Days. She began headlining her own tour, earning $10,000 a night, an impressive milestone. But beneath the success, the cracks were showing. Though she claimed to have stopped drinking, she continued abusing pills. Phyllis often sang about heartbreak because she knew it well. She had a string of relationships, including one with a younger man named Tad, whom she eventually made her manager. That power imbalance strained things, and they split in 1987. Later that year, she met a young woman named Martha, and their relationship became romantic. For a while, it seemed like Phyllis was on the road to recovery. "I've begun the process," she said, "trying to feel better about myself, regain my confidence." But she also admitted there was no middle ground in her life, only extremes. In 1990, her pain nearly overwhelmed her. Phyllis attempted suicide, but was found just in time by her manager, Glenda. She entered the Willow Rehabilitation Center in Florida and began confronting the darkness she had long kept buried. A year later, she released Prime of My Life. It was a triumphant return. The album featured her first #1 R&B single, Don't Want to Change the World, and another hit, Living in Confusion, which reached #9. She toured and made television appearances, but her behavior became increasingly erratic. At Ella Fitzgerald's 75th birthday celebration, Phyllis showed up visibly intoxicated and couldn't remember the lyrics to the song she was supposed to perform. Once again, fear and self-sabotage had taken hold. In 1993, her fragile world began to collapse. Her mother passed away, and just 26 days later, her grandmother followed. The losses devastated Phyllis. Her mental health rapidly declined. She started working on a new album, but preferred the solitude of her bed to the pressure of the studio. She accepted a role in the musical Blues Bar as Eda Pickens, her first time handling full dialogue on stage. It was a struggle. She had gained noticeable weight, forgot lines, and was often distracted during rehearsals. During one rehearsal, she fell and broke her foot. While she was recovering, the show lost its funding, and she returned to New York disheartened. She kept performing, but her love for the stage was fading. One night, after a snide comment from Michael Jordan about her being too bossy to keep a man, she erupted, reportedly throwing a pot of chitlins at a valet and assistant. Her reputation for outbursts was nothing new, but this incident crossed a line. In early 1995, Martha moved in with Phyllis, but the reunion was short-lived. They soon broke up for good. Left alone in her apartment, Phyllis began to spiral. She talked more and more about death. Friends recalled receiving unsettling phone calls in which she seemed to be saying goodbye. Then, on June 30th, 1995, it happened. That afternoon, her dealer arrived at her apartment with sleeping pills. Phyllis told her assistant she planned to sunbathe on the roof and asked to be left alone. When the assistant left, she went into her bedroom, locked the door, and swallowed the pills. Phyllis Hyman was found lifeless just 6 days before her 46th birthday. She didn't leave this world in silence. On a bedside note, she wrote, "I'm tired. I'm tired. Those of you that I love know who you are. May God bless you." At the time of her death in 1995, Phyllis Hyman's net worth was modest, estimated to be under $100,000. Despite her celebrated career in R&B and jazz, marked by charting albums and Broadway acclaim, financial stability often eluded her. Years of industry setbacks, medical bills, and a lifestyle marked by emotional turmoil and addiction had taken a toll on both her career momentum and personal wealth. Phyllis spent her final years living in a spacious yet modest apartment in the Van Gogh Building at 201 West 79th Street in Manhattan. Located on the Upper West Side, the pre-war co-op building was known for its artistic tenants, elegant architectural charm, and peaceful atmosphere. Her unit was filled with books, artwork, music memorabilia, and, by some accounts, unfinished song lyrics and notebooks scattered across a baby grand piano. After her passing, the apartment remained sealed for a time, a shrine of sorts to a life cut short. Over the years, it became somewhat of a ghost story among neighbors, a quiet reminder of a star who had once lived and suffered there. Today, while the building remains a sought-after address in New York, Phyllis's unit has likely passed through various owners, its emotional history fading behind renovated walls and updated interiors. But for those who remember her legacy, That apartment remains the place where her voice went silent, where beauty, pain, and brilliance all came to rest. She was loved. She was celebrated. But in the place it mattered most, inward, Phyllis Hyman felt empty. Her voice left behind timeless beauty. Her story left behind a warning. Rest in peace, Phyllis.